back once again to After the Credits. So today's movie is The Shallows. Now, The Shallows I was actually going to go see last week, and unfortunately on the day I went, they pulled it from the theater. Today, it actually popped up over at the Dollar Theater when I was seeing what was playing over there. So I said, what the hell, go see it. It's only a week before it's possibly going to come out on DVD now. Whatever. So, what did I think of The Shallows? It's very similar to Open Water, I guess, if you ever saw Open Water. Movie about the couple that's out on a scuba diving retreat and accidentally gets left behind by the tour group, and they float in the water for like a week or whatever, or a couple days until they finally get eaten by sharks. This is sort of along those lines, but not exactly. So our story starts with a girl looking for a beach somewhere in Mexico, I guess, or Costa Rica. You know, it's one of those South American or Central America areas. I want to say she was somewhere in South America because they were driving cars. I'm pretty sure they have cars in the Caribbean as well, but it didn't seem like a place that was super hard to get to. She's looking for this beach, and she finds a guy who knows where it is. He takes her there. It's kind of a private beach. Only locals really know about it. You know, one of those type of things. So this guy agrees to take her, and she keeps asking for the name of the beach, and no one will tell her what the name of it is. But she eventually finds the beach, thanks to this guy, and he asks her, you know, like, why are you wanting to go there? And she goes, well, my mother used to come here before I was born, and the last time she was here was when she was pregnant with me, so it's kind of like our beach. We later find out that her mother passed away due to cancer, so this is kind of her way of dealing with her mom's passing, is to go out to this beach. And her mother was a surfer, so of course she's a surfer, and she wants to just surf the waters that her mother surfed, and just her kind of way of being connected to her mother. So she's out surfing, and there's a couple other locals out there surfing too, and they kind of talk to her for a little bit. They're cool, whatever. It's getting kind of late, and they're like, hey, you know, the sun's going down, we should really get going. She says, well, I'm going to catch one more wave, as usual, and then I'll be in. Okay, so they go back up to the beach, and they take off. She's waiting for this wave. As she's waiting for the wave, something hits her board and throws her underwater, and she gets kind of banged up on the reef and rocks underneath. And she surfaces back up, and she's trying to figure out what it was that hit her. And apparently there was a whale that had been attacked by a shark that swam into the area she was in before basically dying and floating up to the surface, and that's what knocked her off of her board. She's kind of investigating the whale, and of course, obviously if the thing just surfaced, there's probably still the shark around because there's blood in the water, duh. So as she's floating around and like paddling over to check out this whale, of course she draws the shark's attention. So he knocks her off her board again, and as she's climbing back up, it wasn't really clear at first if she hit her leg on something to cut herself or if the shark actually grabbed hold of her. From the way it looked, the shark grabbed her, and she said she was bitten by the shark, but it basically just had to cut down her leg, and if the shark actually managed to get hold of her, it probably would have done a hell of a lot more damage than just a cut down your leg. I mean, there wasn't really any specific bite pattern or anything. So, yeah, it's a little unclear, but she says the shark bit her, so I'm going to go with that. So she manages to make her way over, back onto her board, and manages to swim over to this rock bed that, as the tide goes out, this rock bed becomes basically a small island just off the shore, about like 200-300 yards offshore, like the length of a football field, whatever. So she can see the shore, but she's just out of reach of it, a little bit too far to really holler for anyone on the beach to get help. They can just barely hear her when someone does finally show up. So there's this rock that, you know, and that during low tide becomes a small island, but when tide comes back in, it's fully submerged. So basically she has to try and survive as long as she can until high tide comes back in the next day, and hopefully she can get rescued by then. She waits out the night, you know, she patches up her leg the best she can. She waits out the night on the rock, and she gets up the next morning and the shark is still there, still circling around. So she can't really just kind of dive in the water and go for it. she starts to kind of time out the shark's pattern. You know, like he'll come circle around the rock, then he'll go back out to the whale. He'll come back, circle around, go back out to the whale. So she figures that she has a short time where she can jump into the water to do something, but then she has to get back out. And it's real quick. It's like within 30 seconds. So she tries to do a couple things, not really working out for her. She realizes there's a guy on the beach. She kind of tries to holler for help. He eventually hears her, but instead of helping, he realizes that if she's out there, her stuff is on the beach, and he goes and robs her. He sees her board floating in the water, and he goes to try and steal that too, but as he's trying to get the board, the shark eats him. So then, later on that day, the two guys that she was hanging out with the day before come back to surf again, and she's like, no, go back, there's a shark. And they're like, no, honey, there's no sharks in this water, it's too shallow. And of course, right when they say that, chomp, they're gone. So, so she's still stuck out on the rock, and the tide's coming in more and more and more. So she starts to plan it out because there's a buoy floating nearby for how she can get out to the buoy. She needs a distraction to send the shark in a different direction and then kind of swim away from him. And then by the time he comes back, she should be to the buoy. So she sets that up. She gets over to the buoy, and of course the shark now comes over and attacks her on the buoy. And it's just kind of a long, drawn-out thing. And then the movie ends. I'm not going to tell you how it ends. I'm not going to tell you if she lives or dies. But, there's a battle between her and the shark, and it eventually comes to an ending. Again, I'm not going to tell you what happens, but there's an ending. And that's just kind of it. Like I said, it kind of has that feel of Open Water, if you're familiar with Open Water. I know there was another movie that came out earlier this year that I didn't get to see. I think it was called Into the Deep, which is about, I guess, people stuck underwater with a shark in like a scuba situation in a shark cage. At least that's what I got from the movie poster. But yeah, I'm not sure how it compares to that, but it looks like it could be one of those things where, the year of the disaster films where we had like 2 volcano movies come out back to back, and 2 other natural disaster movies that were exactly the same come out back to back. It's just like studios get a hold of a rough treatment for a movie, they decide to pass on it, but then they bring in their own writers to write something similar and put out a movie similar to. Another example is like White House Down and Olympus Has Fallen. They were basically the same movie. Based off the same premise, but different studios did their own version of it. That's probably what this and Into the Deep would look like side by side, I guess. Like I said, I didn't see Into the Deep. I might see if it's out on DVD yet, and may rent it and see how it compares. But looking at the poster, it looks like there were just 2 shark movies this year. Overall, what did I think of it? It was okay for what it was. It kept me as entertained as it can for that type of movie where you're just kind of watching, waiting to see what's going to happen next and how everything's going to play out, but really through the movie not a whole lot happens other than this person sitting on a rock. The shark looked a little fake. When it jumped up out of the water and grabbed hold of the guy, it actually looked worse than Jaws. Maybe not as bad as Jaws 23 from Back to the Future 2, but it didn't look very good. Honestly, I'd say the sharks in Sharknado probably looked better than this shark did. Underwater scenes, the shark looked beautiful. Above the water scenes, it honestly kind of looked like the shark from Finding Nemo when they showed up. I don't know. But overall, like I said, it wasn't bad. So what would I give it as far as a star rating? I'd say... I was going to say a 3 because, like I said, not a whole lot happens, but that's kind of the point of these movies. So judging it off of how I would have judged something like Open Water, I probably would have gave Open Water a 3 because it wasn't that interesting of a backstory, even though it was based on a true story. This one I don't believe is based on a true story, so they have a little bit more leniency to change things to make them flow better. And because of that, it held my attention a lot better than Open Water did. So instead of giving it a 3, I think I'm going to bump it up to a 3.5. Not quite a 4, but it was good for what it was. It was better than Open Water. Shark looked a little bit fake. not a whole lot happened, but it kept you watching to see what was going to happen next. Honestly, if I was watching this at home, I might have drifted off and did something on the computer while it was playing in the background type of thing. Just because there were long periods where nothing was really going on and you could actually look away from the screen for a minute, but as soon as you did, something would probably happen. So, yeah, like I said, I'll give it a 3.5. It was okay for what it was. So that's it for this episode. Again, as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share the video. The links to social networks are down there in the description. My Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google Plus, maybe. That's all down there. And until next time, we'll see you after the credits.